Good afternoon, everyone. Illinois Extension is happy to host another BEAD mapping webinar for you today. Want to congratulate Devon and Shubhika and their whole team with the latest and greatest news on the BEAD challenge. So we're excited to have another session with you all today. I'm Nancy Ouedraogo, State Specialist in Community and Economic Development. Again, happy to have Devon Braunstein, Shubhika Agarwal, who is going to tour you through the process to talk about the timeline and the portal, and they're going to field your questions at the end. We thank them both for returning and continuing this outreach. And without further ado, I'll pass it over to Devon. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Nancy. All right, let's get started. So in today's webinar, we will be mainly covering the BEAD Challenge portal and have some exciting timeline updates to share that you may have seen over email yesterday, but we will be reinforcing today. Agenda, we'll start with a challenge process recap. We have our official timeline. That's a big update for today. And then I want to point you to some really important resources and a couple of new resources. Then we'll spend the bulk of the time going through the 3 different ways that you can submit a challenge through the BEAD Challenge portal. We'll be going through a kind of more static training, and then excited to be able to share a live demo of the portal next week. And then we will close with next steps and Q&A. Objectives, we hope that after this webinar, participants will know what the BEAD Challenge is, why it's important, and how to participate. You'll know the key challenge process dates. You'll be familiar with current and upcoming resources, and most importantly, know how to submit a challenge. So we'll start with a recap and process. So we just have a couple of our recap slides here today in case we have any new folks in the room, and then we'll dive into new content. So all of this, these series of webinars and the challenge process is all tied towards the BEAD program. This is the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program that allocates Illinois $1.04 billion to connect all unserved and underserved locations to broadband over the next 5 years. The goal is to ensure universal broadband coverage across the state using fiber wherever possible. We are currently initiating our broadband mapping challenge process. At the close of that, we'll look for approval from NTIA and then be able to kick off our 1-year sub-grantee selection process, followed by 4 years of implementation. NTIA requires us to prioritize unserved locations and then underserved locations, followed by community anchor institutions and multi-dwelling units. And we're required to have a low-cost plan, affordability plan as a part of these offerings. So the high-level overview of the BEAD process. Earlier this fall, we had our 5-year plan approved, which kind of previews what's happening over the next 5 years. The most recent development is our initial proposal, Volume 1, was formally approved by NTIA about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. This is the document that describes the challenge process, so kind of our roadmap for conducting this whole process. Next is our initial proposal, Volume 2, which is a little bit of a bigger, denser document, and it describes our sub-grantee process, so how we will score applications and ultimately make selections. We have received curing feedback on this document from NTIA, which we're working on incorporating, and then we'll resubmit. The challenge process, of course, is what we'll talk about today. We'll run from February to June, end to end. And then, of course, our sub-grantee selection process will kick off tentatively this summer once we have approval on all of these documents and data sets. So, of course, these dates are fully tentative, subject to the timing of the preceding steps and NTIA approval. So this is kind of a new version of a slide that you've seen over the last several weeks, because what the kind of big milestone that happened yesterday was the publication of our challenge process timeline. So this is the sort of timeline that is locked in, barring any unforeseen changes that need to be made. This is what we will be adhering to and has been published online. So this can be found on our website in our user guide and should be your source of truth for kind of going about this process. So I'll walk through the different buckets. The sort of, day 0 bucket on the left is pre-registration. This is required for anyone who wants access to the challenge portal. We need your information to make sure that you're eligible. And then once we verify you, you will receive a prompt to log into the portal on the first day it opens on the 27th. Individuals who may not be eligible to submit challenges through the portal can also pre-register just to make sure that they receive any up-to-date sort of critical information. So this is open now through March 13th, and I'll explain sort of why we have to close it a couple days before the end of the process in a bit. So again, the big milestone that happened yesterday is called publication of eligible locations. So this kicks off our 120-day process, and more specifically kicks off our 7-day countdown to the opening of the challenge portal. So the pieces that were sort of formally published yesterday on the 20th were this timeline, our user guide outlining the process, the full list of locations and their qualification as unserved, underserved, or served, community anchor institutions and their eligibility status, and just notifying everyone as far and wide as we can that this is all happening. So the CSVs have not changed, but they are up there still. Next, the formal challenge phase will kick off on February 27th. So when you're thinking about the portal and how can I submit an actual challenge, February 27th is the date. That process will be open for 21 days or 3 weeks. And so you'll get your portal login information on the 27th to create your password and begin. Of course, you can start compiling your challenges now with evidence and getting everything together, which we will also talk more about today. Then the next 4 weeks are what we call challenge validation. So we need to review all of the challenges and evidence that was submitted, verify it, and sort of get it ready to pass on to the rebuttal process. And then on April 16th, it kicks off the 3-week rebuttal process. So we will post all challenges received to our portal, removing any personally identifiable information, so anyone can kind of review. And then the rebuttal process kicks off for either ISPs whose service was challenged, or there's a couple of categories that we're considering more open rebuttal. So any eligible challenger could submit evidence to dispute that challenge. Finally, after the rebuttal process closes, we go into adjudication, where we take in everything that we found, compare evidence, verify, and then make those final determinations on the status of each location and its broadband availability. All of this goes to NTIA for approval. We go through a true-up process, make sure that we don't have any duplicates, and then this sort of feeds into that final database, which will inform the entire BEAD program. Quick overview. What is the purpose of the challenge process? It's to ensure that the state broadband map accurately reflects every home and organization's access to broadband, which is important because it informs which locations are eligible for funding. Units of local government, nonprofits, and internet service providers can directly submit challenges through the portal, and individuals can participate by taking speed tests at beadchallenge.org or by compiling their evidence and sharing it with a local government or nonprofit who can submit it on their behalf. What can be challenged? Any location on the map can be challenged. And then when will the challenge process be held? So our challenge process, which defines sort of that overall umbrella of all of those different phases, is open, started yesterday. But we will accept challenges through the portal starting on February 27th, which is next Tuesday. To refresh on key terms here, so a broadband serviceable location is any location on the map that is a business or residential location, as opposed to a community anchor institution, which is an institution that provides critical services and support to residents. So you'll see those differentiated on the map and treated a little bit differently in the challenge process. Unserved, underserved, and served are the 3 classifications of broadband availability. So unserved is a location that doesn't have access to any broadband. So really less than 25/3 megabits per second qualifies a location as unserved. Underserved is the sort of next tier up. So if a location has access to 25/3, but not quite 100/20 megabits per second, it'll qualify as underserved. And then finally, served is a location that has access to speeds of 100 over 20 megabits per second or higher, and latency that is 100 milliseconds or less. Finally, a multi-dwelling unit. This is a structure with multiple but separate housing units, basically an apartment building. And latency is the time it takes for data to go to a server and back to your connection. So you want to make sure that your latency is 100 or lower. And if it is higher than 100, it could be eligible for a challenge to be considered underserved. This is a little refresher on the things you can actually challenge. So won't go through all of these now, but if you are curious on which one, which challenge applies to you in your scenario, please reach out to me or to broadband@illinois.gov, and we can schedule a one-on-one session to kind of walk you through that process and support you. Pre-registration. So pre-registration has been open for a couple months now. So if you would like to participate directly in the challenge process and have not pre-registered, please do. We'll verify your information, send you a confirmation email, and then you'll receive credentials or a prompt to create your credentials for the portal. You can pre-register throughout the challenge phase, but due to the time it takes to verify you and then generate your credentials, we do need to stop accepting pre-registrations a few days before the close of the challenge process, so March 13th at 5 p.m. And then the pre-verification process will open again during the rebuttal phase. So it's not your last chance, but this is the time to pre-register for the challenge phase. And we really recommend that you do this as soon as you can, just to make sure there's not any holdups in your verification and you don't run into any showstoppers. All right, so before we get into the overview of how to submit a challenge, I want to highlight these essential resources because there are a lot of terms and complexities and processes that we need to adhere to as an office and as a state, and thus need to pass on to you. So we're trying to make this as straightforward as we can. And so as you are sort of thinking about what challenges you might want to submit, how to fill in a bulk CSV template, you may be asking yourself, where do I find this information? So we have compiled everything all in one place, and I want to make sure that you have these resources at your fingertips so you're not lost when you start to build your challenges. So our landing page is dceo.illinois.gov/BEAD challenge. This has everything you need to know. It is on this landing page, so I recommend saving this link and bookmarking it. And if you are wondering where an answer to your question might be, check out this page first because it might be a really helpful resource for you. Next, this is a new resource. It's called our user guide or process guidebook. This consolidates sort of everything that Illinois committed to doing and following in our Volume 1 document that was approved by NTIA. But it's a little bit more simplified and condensed, geared towards someone who's participating in the challenge process. So I'm actually going to stop screen sharing my slides to just quickly walk through this user guide to show you what it looks like. Okay, so what you're seeing now is the challenge landing page. So again, this is your resource for all things challenge process. If you scroll down, the newest resources are under challenge phase resources. So you have the timeline, you have the speed test link, pre-registration, and then I'll point you to this challenge process user guide. So I suggest also, printing this out or bookmarking it. It's hopefully an easily navigable resource to just understand what the challenge process is, key dates, and what you need to know and do. So you can click on, a link that is of interest, and it'll take you to that section. I'll also point you to the really helpful appendices. If you're trying to fill out a challenge and you're not sure a technology code or a provider's ID, you can click on the appendix and it'll take you right to that table so you can pull that respective code that you need. So the goal of this guidebook is really to be a one-stop shop for all resources and codes. If you see something that is not in here that you think should be, don't hesitate to reach out because we'll update this to make sure it is a continuously helpful resource. All right, now I'll go back to the slides. So like I shared, we have this new timeline. It's in our user guide. It should be in your inboxes, and it is on our landing page. So if you have questions about the timing, this is, again, your one-stop shop. A couple of other things that have been on the website, but I want to highlight them so you know they are there. This is the downloadable list of broadband availability classifications. So you can download lists of location IDs to see which locations are eligible for BEAD. This is the same information that's on the BEAD challenge map. You can also download the list of community anchor institutions here. So if you're curious if your organization is on the list, download the spreadsheet or check out the map. This is another helpful reminder. So there are bulk challenge CSV templates. These will be available for download on the portal itself. But if you would like to get a head start, you can download them from the landing page here. You just click on the the challenge type that you're looking for, and then download the CSV. And again, there's going to be a bunch of fields you need to fill in. So we have these bulk challenge reference documents that give a description of each field and tells you where to find the technology code, the category code, etc. Finally, we will be starting office hours and technical assistance when the portal opens on Tuesday. So every Tuesday and Thursday from 1 to 2 and 3 to 4, we will have just sort of an open Zoom office hours where you can drop in, get in the queue, and we'll address your question either as a full group or in a smaller breakout room. So that'll be Shubhika and I, as well as potentially some of our portal developers who may be able to help with any technical issues. And we'll continue to have our weekly webinar series at this time, starting with a demo of the portal and the end-to-end process next week. And then based on like questions that we're getting in areas of interest, we'll probably adjust as we go and cover topics that are most interesting. You can always email broadband@illinois.gov with challenge process in the subject line. And we, I think, have been pretty quick to answer your questions. If there's a delay, don't hesitate to just bump that email up and send a friendly reminder, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. So all of this information will be available on the support page of the challenge portal. So you'll have access to that Zoom link. You can add it to your calendar. And a final reminder before we dig into the portal. Collecting evidence may take some time. You know, if you're looking to get a letter from a provider or you need to document communication, that might not happen overnight. So from yesterday, we have a month until the close of the challenge phase. And so you can start collecting evidence now. And I really encourage you to do so, so you're not stuck at the last moment, you know, scrambling and not having what you need to complete a valid challenge. So if you need support or you have questions, please, you know, reach out to us sooner than later so we can help. If you are a local government or a nonprofit who's planning on collecting challenges on behalf of residents, again, we recommend creating a plan now for how you're going to get the word out and collect those challenges. For those of you who were on our webinar last week, we heard from Lake County. They built a form kind of collecting the necessary fields and evidence from residents that they will then go and submit on their behalf. So Lake County is a great contact. I think we sent out the contact information for Betsy last week, but I'm sure they'd be happy to kind of share their approach. But bottom line is start planning now, so you have time to kind of troubleshoot. And then again, need ideas. Lake County and then McLean County did a really great press event to get the word out among other residents and local media. And if you do want that one-on-one support to create a form or build a plan, don't hesitate to reach out to broadband@illinois.gov, and we are here to support you. All right, I'm going to take a quick sip of water. And we can dig into the BEAD Challenge portal preview. So this is really exciting, and I want to credit our team at the Data Science Institute at University of Chicago for all of their hard work on building this portal from scratch. It's been a process, but I think we've created something that is hopefully relatively easy to use and can be straightforward and useful to all of the challengers. So excited to dig in. So going to walk through some of the basics and then how you can actually submit a challenge. So for starters, on February 27th, pre-registered and verified challengers will receive an email from the Broadband office with an invitation to create an account with the challenge portal. You'll have a link that you can click, which will then lead you to the registration page on the portal. And then you can register with the email who received the invitation and create a password. Once you log in, based on your browser settings, it should remember you, so you don't need to log in every time. But if you do forget your password, you'll always have the opportunity to reset it as you need. All right, so once you're in the challenge portal, this is what the homepage looks like. Pretty simple, straightforward. You'll see there's a sort of navigation bar on the left around creating challenges, and then some of the basics at the top. So there are 3 ways that you'll be able to create a challenge, and we break down this presentation looking at each of those 3 ways. The first way is creating a single challenge through the portal using the Create New Challenge button. This is best for creating a single challenge. You can see the image on the right is what that button looks like. The second method is creating a bulk challenge through the portal. So notice that these first 2 are both through the portal. You'll use the Upload a Bulk Challenge CSV feature. We recommend using the bulk challenge CSV route if you have more than 50 challenges. And on the right is a little preview of what that looks like. Then third is you can initiate a challenge through the BEAD challenge map. This is best for either a single challenge or a small amount of challenges. We recommend less than 50. We, I think, are capping it at around 10,000, but really if you're challenging at many locations, it's best to go through the CSV. Otherwise, there's kind of a lot of manual work assigning each of those challenges. So method 1, these are going to be the next couple of slides. This is the way to create a challenge, part 1. Through the portal using the Create New Challenge form. So you'll navigate to the portal homepage. You'll select Create New Challenge, this blue button on the left-hand side. And then you'll see a form here. So you'll fill out all of the required fields, the challenge type, the location ID or CAI ID, and then based on the challenge type that you select, it'll kind of alter the rest of the fields based on what's required for that challenge type. Important note here, you'll see that this form does require the location ID or a CAI ID. We have the option to go through the map, so you don't need to try and find that ID. So really only initiate a challenge through the portal if you do have that ID already. If you don't, we'll talk about method 3, which is through the map. So once you create and complete that form, you'll save it as a draft. And then you'll see on the left-hand side here, you'll click on View Draft Challenges. This is where all of your draft challenges will be stored. The next step is adding evidence. So every challenge requires evidence. This will be a file that you upload, and it can be a PDF, a zip file if it's more than one document, a PNG, a JPEG, or a .gif. So again, if you want to upload multiple files, bundle them into a zip file, and then the entire upload must be less than 1 gigabyte. After you upload your evidence before you can submit it, you might want to review your evidence. So you can click Review Evidence and it'll pop up in another window. You could just make sure that everything is as expected. Before you submit, you can also edit your submission. So anytime you can click Edit and change any of the specific fields and then save draft. adding a provider. So what you can do just to make this easier on everyone is start typing a provider name, and then the list of providers will pop up. You'll click the one that you're looking for, and it'll grab the assigned FCC provider ID and display it in that field. But you can see up top, it'll show you which provider you've selected. Finally, before you submit your challenge, you might want to view all of the details one more time. So you can click view more to see those details. And if you changed your mind or want to start over, you can click delete to delete that challenge. You can also click delete all to delete all of the challenges in your sort of draft section. This is the view if you view more details and you just want to see everything related to your challenge. So again, once all of the fields are complete, you've uploaded evidence, you've reviewed evidence, you can go ahead and submit. And then once you click the submit button, it'll disappear from the draft challenges and it'll move over to submitted challenges. So you'll see this is the kind of third button on the left-hand side. If you want to see your history of submitted challenges, it'll be here. So you can see this is the challenge that was just submitted. If you are creating a challenge through the portal or through the map, every challenge will appear as their own line item. If you're submitting a bulk challenge, they'll be aggregated together by provider. So that third column that says number of locations / CAIs in challenge will be more than one if you've submitted a bulk challenge. So you can see that you can view more. You can download evidence, and then you can export the data as a CSV. Again, you can't edit an already submitted challenge, but you can review it just so you're aware of the history of what has been submitted. And I will now pass it over to Shubhika to talk through method number 2.
Awesome. Thanks, Devon. That was really good. So I think in the second method, which is using the bulk CSV templates that Devon had earlier referred to, this is mostly recommended for any challenge that has greater than 50 challenges as part of the submission, or you can use it for as few as 1 to 2, depends on whether or not you have access to the location ID. And as Devon mentioned, again, there's 2 ways of getting to that. One could be you already have access to the fabric, so you have the location IDs. The second one is using the BEAD challenge map to actually identify those. And in the third method, when we are using the map, essentially, there's also a way to just export a CSV with all the location IDs. So I think Devon's going to go into depth on how you can go about that. But if you have access to location IDs and a few challenges that you want to submit, this would be the best way to to proceed with the challenges. So you would be clicking on submit bulk challenges, and you will see all the different challenge types listed on the screen that you see. And either you already have access to the CSV template through the BEAD landing page that we had shared earlier, or if you're looking at it for the first time, you can also download the specific CSV for each of these challenge types through the portal using the download template option that shows up. So after you have downloaded that, so this is essentially speaking about how you can download a template from the portal. So clicking on the download template button will get you access to that specific template with all the required fields for that specific challenge type. A note about the different CSVs. So again, this is what has to be used for the submission. You cannot be using any other kind of template. We would definitely recommend using these because they have the appropriate fields that need to be submitted for any kind of challenge. And there are separate templates for each of the challenge types, except for the technology and business service only challenge types. They just have one common template. But again, if you go onto the portal, that's listed separately under each of those challenge types as well. On how to fill out these, there are resources in the user guide that Devon had earlier shared. And there's also this other reference material that can be individually accessed at the BEAD landing page. So those would be super helpful as you're trying to fill these out, because as you might see a screenshot here of the availability template, there's something called the reason code. So there are specific 8 reason codes under availability challenge that are identified in the resources that we've shared. And if you're using the template, you should have access to that and fill out the appropriate reason code. And that is how it's going to be accepted into the portal when you submit it. So once you have filled out the CSV template with the challenge information, you are going to select choose file to actually bring that into the portal. So the arrow there shows the choose file button to actually upload that specific challenge CSV to the BEAD portal. Then what really happens is it starts to process the file that has been uploaded. So in the first screenshot there, it's just going to show you a little circle going around saying processing files, where it's going to read through all of the records that you have submitted as part of the CSV. And if there are any errors, there's going to be an error prompt that shows up. So just for this example, it shows that there is an invalid location ID. So we've tried to make sure that the error message is as intuitive as possible. It gives you a sense of which row has the error and what column specifically and what needs to be changed. So it's going to be pretty easy to understand what needs to be changed before it actually moves on to the next step. So this might be an iterative process at times where you might have to rectify some errors on the CSV before it's successfully uploaded without any error. And that is when you'd move on to the next step. The next step, which is uploading the evidence. So as Devon mentioned, in the bulk challenge submission, it's going to be bifurcated based on the providers that are included as part of your challenge. So in the example that we see below, we basically just have 2 challenges, but for 2 different providers. So it shows us the provider ID and the number of challenges associated with that specific provider. So it's going to be broken down into 2 different challenges in this case, and then you'll be having the option to, or this is actually a requirement to upload evidence. And as soon as you do that, it's going to complete your submission, and those would again move to the submitted challenges page. Passing it on back to Devon for how do we use the map for a challenge.
Great, thanks, Shubhika. All right, so that was method number 2, using the bulk challenge upload templates. Now we're going to the third and final method, which is not originating in the portal, but originating through the BEAD challenge map. A couple of tips on when to use the map. If you are looking to challenge a smaller number of locations, maybe less than 50, the map is a manageable tool to use. And the map is also helpful because if you don't have access to the FCC's Fabric data, you can pull locations directly from the map, and it brings along location ID, providers, and technologies, other fields that you'll need in order to submit the challenges. A couple of important notes: you can't carry more than 10,000 challenges from the map to the portal, and we really don't recommend that you come anywhere close to this. It'll be a lot easier for you if you just use the bulk challenge CSV template. And again, happy to walk through that in more depth. Second bullet just kind of reiterates that if you are bringing over close to 10,000 challenges, you'll need to kind of fill in for each row the details, and that will take a while. So there's an easier way to do it using the CSV bulk templates. Just reiterating again when the map will be useful. So if you don't have the Fabric license, the map is a great tool because it carries over the location ID and the CAI ID. So you can search directly for an address, for a zip code, and kind of be brought to that area on the map, submit a challenge, which is what I will walk through right now. So before we go into the process, this may look familiar from our webinar about a month ago on the map walkthrough. So this map has been live for about a month now, but I just want to kind of recap a couple of tools here. So once you're on the BEAD challenge map, you can zoom in and out using the plus and minus buttons. You can click on census block to view census block lines and boundaries. And this is helpful for area challenges because if there's a challenge in a census block with more than or 6 or more locations challenged, it'll trigger an area challenge and it puts the onus back on the provider to demonstrate otherwise for that entire census block. If you want to learn about the source for the base map, you can click on this little eye at the bottom left. And then on the right side, there's a short user guide for how to use this map. If you click on the question mark on the bottom right, this little hand is the select tool. So you can select locations, or you can hold down your mouse to use the lasso tool and select your group of locations. And then you can also view this map in Spanish. So again, this might be review for some of you, but this is kind of how you select locations from the map and then carry them over to the portal, which is the new piece for today. There's a couple of ways to select a location to challenge on the map. The first is you can search for a location in the search bar, click on it, and then click Add to Challenge. Once you click on it, it'll be under this tab called Challenges. So that'll be any challenges you've selected will appear on that tab. The second way that you can add a location to a challenge is you, let's say, go to a zip code or you zoom in on the map and you see a bunch of locations. Everything in your site will kind of appear on that left-hand panel as a list. So if you want to look at the details and select specific locations, you can scroll through that left-hand panel and click on Add to Challenge. And then the third is using the select tool. So that's the little pointer in the upper right-hand corner. You can select one location, or you can sort of hold down your mouse and lasso a group, add it to challenge, and you can do that, multiple times. So once a location is added to the challenge, you can click on the Challenges tab, which is the third tab on the left-hand side, and you can see all of the locations you've selected in that panel. You can remove them, you can view them in a grid, they will all be there. Pointing out a couple of tools once you have added challenges to your, let's call it a shopping cart. You can view it as a table, you can save it as a CSV, or you can upload a previously saved CSV. So if you view it as a table, this is what you can see. Just a little bit of a different view here. You can also delete rows as you need. And then once you feel good about your set of challenges in your shopping cart, you can go ahead and click Submit Challenges. You can see the button on the left-hand side in orange. So this will take you to the challenge portal. This is the piece that has not been live. This will be new as of Tuesday. When you're brought to the challenge portal, it'll carry over all of the locations that you had added as challenges to your shopping cart. If it's your first time entering the portal, you'll be prompted to log in. After that, it will likely save your login information. So you'll be brought directly to this page. If you have selected both broadband serviceable locations or BSLs and community anchor institutions or CAIs, you'll have an option for both groupings to either apply a challenge type to that entire group. So let's say they're all availability challenges. You would click on this drop-down arrow and select the challenge type to apply to all of them. Or you might want to select the challenge type individually per location. If you have a mix of availability, speed, and enforceable commitments, you can do that on the next page. So you would click individually, set on the next page. On the right-hand side, it's identical, but you'll select the challenge type for your CAIs. If you only have carried over BSLs or only CAIs, you will only see that respective panel on this page. So if you see both panels, it means you have a mix. So once you've made your decision and you save the selection, you'll be brought to the View Draft Challenges page. This should hopefully look familiar by now. This is kind of the page where every challenge that's been initiated but not yet submitted will live. Here, similar to what we shared before, you can click edit to edit your challenge. You can upload evidence. You can delete your challenge. And then once you upload evidence, you can submit. A couple of things to note here. On the left-hand side, there's a column called Challenge ID. This is something that we assign on the back end. It's a unique ID for every challenge, just so we can keep track of the challenge as it moves through its life cycle. And feel free to also note that down, but it'll be sort of tied to that challenge throughout its entire life cycle. As a reminder, evidence is required for all challenges. So if you don't upload evidence, you'll receive this error message, and then you'll be able to go back to your draft challenge and make sure that you're uploading an evidence file. Finally, another feature on the portal is the support page. So if you are running into an issue, you're confused, you need help, there's a simple support page. You can either click it on the top navigation bar or on this left-hand panel. And you'll see a view-only Word document where we will be consistently updating any information related to the office hours, helpful resources here, and then we'll be documenting FAQs. So, try and see if a question you have may have been answered already because someone else ran into the same question. So that'll all be here. And of course, our email address is on there as well, and we can set up a call or answer your question over email. So that's the overview. And again, next week we'll have a live demo of this process, more of an in-depth training, and also a video recorded of someone kind of walking through the flow here so you can watch and pause on your own. So a reminder, support and technical assistance. We'll have office hours twice a week, 4 different time slots. We'll have our weekly webinars, our FAQ and our help guide, the new challenge process user guide, and of course, visit our landing page for all of these resources. Next steps, if you have not pre-registered and you would like access to the portal, please pre-register. ISPs, local governments, and nonprofits are eligible to access the portal directly, and residents who want to participate can either take a 3 speed tests over 3 days at beadchallenge.org, or they can find a local nonprofit or unit of local government, that could be a school or library, and encourage them to pre-register and participate and submit challenges on their behalf. I've talked to a handful of counties who are doing this for their residents. So if you're an individual on this call and you're having trouble finding someone to submit a challenge on your behalf, please reach out to us, because I think we have plenty of willing organizations who will do so. Upcoming webinars, a full portal demonstration and end-to-end, how do you submit a challenge training. The portal opens on Tuesday, February 27th, so you'll get a link to create your logins that day, and then you can go forth and start poking around, and you'll have 3 weeks to submit challenges. Of course, speed test, please continue speed testing if you're an individual. Speed test taken anytime December 20th and on, which is 60 days prior to yesterday, which was the start of the challenge process, will be accepted. And our landing page will have all of the latest resources, and we'll update you over email if there's any new resources. So with that, I know we have a bunch of questions in the chat, and some have been answered along the way. So I might just start at the top here and move through these. Okay, so we got a question around how we went about identifying unserved and underserved locations. Shubhika, do you want to take this one?
So yeah, in terms of identifying the unserved and underserved and served location lists, so we basically came up with this based on the FCC availability data. So that is as of 23rd January 2024. That's the one being used. It is based on data submitted by the providers to the FCC as of the June 30th, 2023 filing. The version of the fabric that's being used is version 3.2 that came out in July 2023. And so we've used that as a base and also incorporated any enforceable commitments So that is any other state or federal funding programs that already serve some of these locations. So they would have been marked as served, irrespective of the availability data. And then we've also incorporated the pre-challenge DSL modification. So any location that has only access to DSL service has been marked as underserved. So including all of these three data sets, essentially, we have finalized the unserved, underserved, and served lists that are available on the BEAD landing page.
Thanks, Shubhika. All right, moving on. I see some concern that local governments may not be interested in participating on behalf of residents or supportive. We can find you another local government or nonprofit who can submit a challenge on your behalf if you're an individual. So that's frustrating, but we're here for you and can certainly put you in touch with someone who can submit a challenge on your behalf. So please reach out to me, Shubhika, or Broadband at illinois.gov, and we can get that figured out. Just seeing the note about rural communities struggling, I think the good news is that the BEAD program requires us as our top priority to connect all unserved locations, which are locations that don't have any access to broadband service, less than 25/3 megabits per second. So it won't happen in a day, but we're kind of excited to be kicking off this process to make sure that everyone has access. A question about will we have access to the updated CSVs for served, underserved, and unserved locations and CAIs once the challenge process is complete? Yes. So we have the sort of current status available right now on our landing page, available to download as CSV. This is identical to what is on our BEAD challenge map. And then we will be posting the challenges that are submitted after the challenge phase. And then we'll be posting the final determinations at the end of the process. So the answer is yes. Once we go through this entire process and receive NTIA approval, we will be able to share those final designations. A question, we have a carrier that is showing fiber to the home throughout a service area, but they're not a fiber to the home carrier. What is the best way to challenge? I believe this could be a challenge, a technology challenge. So there's a challenge type called technology, and you can provide evidence that there is not the fiber to the home technology that they are saying that they provide. A question, are unlicensed wireless providers operating under license by rule included in the BEAD map? Shubhika, looks like you answered some of this in the chats if you want to summarize.
Yeah, so we do have licensed by rule providers listed on the map currently. They are identified as a reliable technology provider as per BEAD guidelines. So that is that. I believe there's also a follow-up question to that, Devon.
Yeah, let's see. How does a location that is not a subscriber to a wireless licensed by rule prove that they cannot receive a signal without relying on that provider to drive out to their location, record the data, and formally share the data with the location owner in a timely manner under 3 weeks? So I think that the household should make the best attempts to request service from that provider. We have a month as of yesterday, so I would encourage any household or someone who wants to participate in the challenge process to make that request as soon as they can. And if you do not hear back from the provider, I would document any communication requests and outreaches to that provider and submit that as evidence, because you're doing the best you can to get that service, and we'll evaluate sort of in the office based on the criteria set forth by NTIA, and hopefully that can demonstrate that the provider may or may not be able to serve that household. All right, we have another question. Is the challenge process meant for ISPs to challenge the state map for accuracy, grant seekers to challenge ISPs enabled locations, or both? Shubhika, I think you typed up an answer here if you want to summarize for the group.
Sure. So I think again, it's meant for both scenarios where, like, definitely engaging ISPs who currently serve specific areas or are planning to expand in some areas and the map shows differently. So certainly welcome that input, but at the same time, I think the intent of the challenge process is also to incorporate community feedback. So we have nonprofits and local governments who can directly participate and submit challenges. Individuals can participate through their local governments and nonprofits. So they could either share the specific challenge information and evidence with their local government or participating nonprofit, or they can actually participate in the speed test challenge through the beadchallenge.org speed test portal. So that information all goes to the University of Chicago, who's going to submit it on their behalf. But if it's a different challenge type, or if they're using a different speed test tool, they can actually also share, the three speed tests that they've taken on 3 separate days with their participating local government or nonprofit, and that can be submitted on their behalf. So it's ISPs and also community feedback through all of these different ways.
Thanks, Shubhika. Is Ready.net being used as the platform? It is not. This is a homegrown solution that the state created with the University of Chicago data scientists. What Fabric version is being used? Fabric version 3.2 released in July of 2023, and we have some more details in the chat. Is the evidence resident speed latency tests only, or is there other evidence that we should be providing? So I think this question is related to the beadchallenge.org. So if you are an individual and you complete 3 speed tests over 3 days at beadchallenge.org, and you include your information at the bottom along with the speeds that you currently subscribe to and submit it, that's all you need to do. The speed test captures everything related to speed and latency that's required for the challenge to be compiled by the Internet Equity Initiative and submitted as a bulk challenge. CostQuest license. The state has CostQuest license type C clarified in the chat. Is there a file size limitation for bulk uploads? The bulk challenge CSV has a maximum of 10,000 challenge records per CSV, and the evidence must be 1 gigabit or smaller. We haven't been able to find the CAI IDs for 2 locations in the map and the fabric. Is there any other way to find this? So there's a list of all community anchor institutions on our landing page that you can download. And if it is not there, then we encourage you to submit a challenge type called is a CAI. So if you see a location on the map that's currently categorized as a broadband serviceable location, so a home or a business, and you believe it to be a community anchor institution, there's a challenge category where you can make the case for why it is a community anchor institution. You'll indicate the sort of category it falls under, and you'll share a brief explanation, and then provide evidence that it is indeed a library or a school. That could be an electric bill, or some formal designation that shows us that that clarification is indeed correct. At the time of challenge submission, can you save the form, or do you have to submit right away? So you can save the form, and it'll be stored in your View Draft Challenges section of the portal. There's really only 3 buttons. You can create a challenge, you can view draft challenges, you can create a bulk challenge, or okay, there's 4, or you can view your submitted challenges. So it's in that View Draft Challenges. You can save it, you can come back to it, edit it, find evidence. So yeah, take your time. Can an organization have more than 1 person register? Yes. So as an organization, you may want to share a login if you want to be coordinating on the same challenges. So some organizations are opting to just use 1 email, have 1 login, and share that password so they can sort of go in collaboratively. But if you do want 2 unique logins, we just need unique email addresses. So the portal is sort of tied to email addresses. So if you give us 2 emails, then you can have 2 accounts. Is there a way to see areas who have taken the speed test on the map, which can help us target our outreach? I think we can ask the Internet Equity Initiative to pull some data on this. So John, if you want to follow up after the fact, I can put you in touch with them to kind of share the latest analysis. Our challenges needing to relate to a specific area. Can a challenger submit a bulk challenge for all locations within the state that a provider would like to challenge for availability? Or should they be grouped?
So to this question, I just reply that, any challenge would need a location ID. So that would certainly have to be included. And, for the specific challenge, even if it's a bulk challenge, each record in there would need a location ID, number one. So there was a follow-up question on if they provide location IDs for the entire state, would that work? So again, just to clarify on that, whatever technology and provider is being challenged, they should actually have reported service for that location on the existing map. If that, combination of location ID, provider, and technology is currently on the map, that is only when that's going to be accepted through the portal. So just make sure of that. And I think there's some question on the evidence that is being collected on a large scale for the entire state. So if we have maybe specifics on the provider that you're looking at also, and what exactly is the reason for the availability challenge, we might be able to assist with some of what would be the most appropriate evidence that can be included. So yeah, please feel free to follow up with additional information on the kind of challenge you are preparing for, and we can try and help you with some of that.
And then just to comment on, I think some of the follow-up questions about submitting evidence for a certain area. I want to highlight the area challenge, which may be useful if you're looking to challenge a lot of locations. So on the BEAD challenge map, there's a filter called census blocks. So you can see that in the census block boundaries are pretty large. So all you need is 6 locations in that census block to submit valid challenges and evidence. And it sort of activates a challenge for the entire census block. So it's a little bit less work than, needing to do every single household in an area or in the state if that's what you are interested in doing. Just make sure that you have the proper evidence, and you'll need to indicate a provider and the technology and of course the challenge type. What can you do if locations are not in the FCC database and thus not on the map? Shubhika, you want to take that one?
Yeah, so I think with this challenge process, how it's set up, we can only be challenging locations that exist on the map currently. We understand that the fabric is not the most perfect one, currently using version 3.2, as we mentioned. So if there are instances where you're seeing that, your location is not on the fabric, certainly share that information with us so that we can pass that on to the FCC as a location challenge. But that is not going to be reflected on the maps immediately because they have a timeline for when they actually share revised versions of the fabric. The latest one actually came out somewhere in December 2023. So we already have a fabric version 4, which is going to be used for the next set of FCC maps. But just generally, if you are seeing locations that are not on the existing fabric, feel free to share that information with us. Again, to summarize, it's not going to be an instant change on the map itself, but it's going to show up on the next iteration and revision of the fabric.
Yeah, so we're kind of at the will of the FCC's data as our starting point. The FCC went through its own national challenge process about 1.5 years ago. That sort of helped us get to where we are now. And now the state takes that data, adds in the additional information that we have, opens it up for this challenge process. So we're able to refine it further, but there are certain restrictions like the one that Shubhika just mentioned. So please raise that to us, and then we can continue to give that feedback to the FCC and, hope that it is eventually included. Okay, 2 more questions. I know we're at time, but I'll just keep rolling through these for those who can stick around. Can you explain criteria for challenges based on planned fiber deployment projects in progress that will serve locations? So there is a challenge type called planned service, which we would recommend. And then you can look on the user guide for a description of the evidence, which I can pull up right now. So planned service is type P. And something qualifies as this challenge type if the challenger has knowledge that broadband will be deployed at this location by June 30th, 2024, or a provider building out broadband that offers performance beyond the requirements of an enforceable commitment. And then there's some evidence examples. So this could be a construction contract, something showing that your work permits that this work is already in motion and already committed to. Contracts, a binding agreement, things like that. So I'll put the user guide link in the chat, which is going to be the best one-stop shop for all of this information. Shubhika, anything to add to that?
No, I think that covers it. Yes.
What evidence is necessary to show that an existing ISP service is unreliable? The speed test may not be able to be performed over 3 days or 3 days in a row. So a couple of things, the speed test, try it out, and ideally you'll get the results that can help you demonstrate what you're experiencing. You can take more than 3 speed tests over more than 3 days if you're not sure that some went through. So beadchallenge.org is your best bet. And it'll show you whether your speeds are lower than the sort of acceptable threshold, and it'll give you a prompt encouraging you to submit them along with the speeds that you currently subscribe to. Another option is a latency challenge. So similarly, on that speed test, you'll see a number for latency. If latency is above 100, that's another indicator that it might be an underserved location, and you can go ahead and submit that through the beadchallenge.org, which will be submitted as a challenge if you do 3 speed tests or latency tests over 3 days. And then the third bucket, I would say, is availability challenge. So if a provider cannot offer you the service that is indicated on the map, you can provide evidence of that. So that could be a letter from the provider saying that they can't provide you with 25/3 service or 100/20 megabits per second service. That could be like some documented communication, or if the provider can't do so within 10 business days or provides more than the standard installation charge. All of those are examples of sort of evidence that you can provide to show that. That looks like all the questions I have. Any other final questions from the group? All right, well, let me put some final links in the chat. So I put the user guide in. This is the landing page. And then this is the tool for residents to take 3 speed tests over 3 days. And finally, this is I'm going to find the map, just so you have it handy if you want to start checking out the map. So we'll send an email with all of this, and it's all on the landing page, all in one place. All right. Well, if that's it, then thanks a lot, Nancy, for hosting, and Shubhika for co-presenting, and all of you for your questions. And again, broadband@illinois.gov. Don't hesitate to reach out if you need support or have a specific case to run by us. We are here to help. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all. Bye.
Thank you. Have a good day.